Good evening. It's Tuesday, 11th of March, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. ICC warrant. Duterte arrested at Manila airport over ICC warrant linked to deadly drugs. Tensions rise. EU warns Trump unwilling to negotiate ahead of looming steel and aluminum tariffs. Winery tribute. Beloved winery dog's legacy lives on in Sonoma after owner's extraordinary decision.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Amarsha Fernando.
Good evening once again. We're starting today's bulletin with the latest news coming from the Philippines. Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was arrested at Manila's main airport after Interpol served an ICC warrant over alleged crimes against humanity tied to his deadly war on drugs.
The 79-year-old former leader is accused of crimes against humanity for his brutal war on drugs, which, according to the ICC, led to the deaths of as many as 30,000 people, mostly poor men, gunned down in the streets. In a video circulating online, Duterte is seen confronting officers on board the plane. His arrest has been hailed by human rights groups and victims' families as a long-awaited step toward justice. Lila de Lima, one of Duterte's most vocal critics, who was herself imprisoned under his government, said, "This is not vengeance, this is justice finally taking its course." Duterte had previously admitted before a Senate inquiry that he ordered police to encourage criminals to resist arrest so they could be killed, yet he denied giving orders to assassinate suspects directly. He also once claimed to have led a death squad while serving as the mayor of Davao. Despite widespread international condemnation, Duterte remained popular during his presidency. His daughter, Sara Duterte, is currently the country's vice president.
Tanker carrying jet fuel for the US military was hit by a container ship off northeast England, with the collision igniting a blaze on both vessels, causing multiple explosions and forcing both crews to abandon ship.
Thick black smoke billows from a huge blaze in the North Sea. The aftermath after a collision between an oil tanker and a cargo ship off the coast of East Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. All 37 mariners from both crews are safe and accounted for, local authorities have confirmed, thanks to a swift rescue operation by emergency services. The two ships involved were the MV Stena Immaculate, an oil tanker operated by a US-based maritime company, and a Portuguese-flagged cargo ship called Solong. The Stena Immaculate was carrying jet fuel, which is now spilling into the North Sea. American officials have confirmed it was carrying cargo for the US Department of Defense. The Solong was carrying sodium cyanide. Data from ship tracking website Marine Traffic appears to indicate that the Stena Immaculate was stationary when the collision happened, and that the Solong was moving at a speed of 16 knots. The North Sea is a very busy trade route, but collisions are rare. Attention is now turning to the environmental impacts. The UK Coast Guard is assessing what pollution response might be needed.
A key economic advisor to the US President Donald Trump pushed back on talk of recession stemming from uncertainty around his administration's tariff policies as American consumers' fears grow and US stocks plunged.
Fears that uncertainty over trade tariffs will trigger a recession gripped the U.S. stock market on Monday. A Reuters poll showed 91% of economists see higher recession risks due to President Donald Trump's shifting trade policies.
They'll be met with the exact same tariff.
But the White House pushed back on talk of a recession on Monday. The director of its National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, said there were many reasons to be optimistic about the U.S. economy, despite concerns about inflation and predictions of a contraction in GDP in the first quarter. He argued U.S. tax cuts would boost the economy and said Trump's tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China were already bringing manufacturing and jobs back to the U.S. Hassett and other White House officials have also repeatedly bashed the economy inherited from former President Joe Biden. But when Trump took office, GDP growth had largely exceeded trend for 2 years, consumer spending was strong, and unemployment was still near historic lows. Since then, several indicators have pointed to a softening trend, and a monthly survey of U.S. households out on Monday showed that Americans expressed more pessimism about their financial situations. Meanwhile, early economic data suggests the U.S. economy could contract in the first quarter of the year. Hassett called it a very temporary phenomenon. Trump himself declined to predict whether the U.S. could face a recession in a Fox News interview on Sunday. On Monday, economists at Goldman Sachs cut their forecast for U.S. growth this year and raised their forecast for inflation.
And over to North Korea now. North Korea fired multiple ballistic missiles hours after condemning the South Korean and U.S. militaries for launching drills that Pyongyang called a dangerous, provocative act that risked accidentally sparking a confrontation.
North Korea fired multiple ballistic missiles Monday after the South began joint drills with the U.S. It's the first time the North has launched missiles since Donald Trump returned as U.S. president. It comes after the reclusive country's foreign ministry condemned the joint drills, with state media quoting the ministry, calling them a dangerous, provocative act. Pyongyang state media added that it would worsen the situation on the Korean peninsula. On Monday, South Korea's Air Force Chief Lee Young-soo bowed in apology over what he called an unprecedented accident last week, where two jets mistakenly bombed a village, wounding at least 29 people. According to South Korea's Yonhap news agency, a pilot in one jet was pressed for time and didn't double-check target coordinates, while another dropped bombs without noticing that the coordinates were incorrect. The Defense Ministry was not immediately available for comment. The accidental bombing happened about 25 miles northeast of Seoul, outside a training area near the North Korean border. It also coincided with the annual Freedom Shield exercises jointly held with the United States. The drills are scheduled to run till March 20th, but live fire exercises were suspended after the misfire. Residents have long complained about the disturbances and risks from the exercises.
The Dalai Lama has sparked renewed tensions with Beijing, revealing a new book that his successor will be born outside China, a move likely to escalate the long-standing dispute over Tibet's spiritual and political future.
In a powerful new book titled Voice for the Voicelessness, the 14th Dalai Lama has made a landmark declaration confirming that his successor will be born outside China in what he describes as the free world. The 89-year-old spiritual leader had previously hinted that the centuries-old lineage of Dalai Lama might end with him, but this is the first time he has definitively stated that the institution will continue and that his reincarnation will take place beyond China's reach, ensuring the continuation of spiritual mission and the aspiration of the Tibetan people. The Dalai Lama fled to India in 1959 following a failed uprising against Chinese rule and has lived in exile ever since. In his book, he writes that his successor must be born in a place where compassion, freedom, and spiritual values can thrive. A clear challenge to Beijing's long-standing claim that it alone has the authority to appoint his successor. At a press conference, the Chinese Foreign Ministry reiterated its position, saying the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama is a matter for Beijing to decide, not for the spiritual leader himself. But the Dalai Lama maintains that any successor named by China would lack legitimacy in the eyes of Tibetans and the global Buddhist community.
Let's go for a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. And welcome back. The European Union's trade chief said that Trump administration appears unwilling to engage in negotiations to prevent a trade conflict just days before the US is set to impose sweeping tariffs on steel and aluminum imports.
The Trump administration does not seem to be engaging in talks to avoid trade conflict with the European Union. That's according to the EU's trade head Monday. The comments come just 2 days before the US is due to impose tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports. European Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic.
I travelled to US last month. I was seeking constructive dialogue to avoid the unnecessary pain.
He further said the EU was ready for constructive engagement. He added nobody wins from tariffs and that partners with $1.7 trillion of mutual trade should be extremely careful.
We will always protect European businesses, workers and consumers from unjustified tariffs. I think we've been very clear about it and we know that they expect no less from us.
Markets have been rocked by the US imposing numerous tariffs since Trump's return as president earlier this year. The US put 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada last week, and Washington also placed fresh duties on Chinese goods.
Russian troops have launched a large-scale offensive to retake parts of the western Kursk region from Ukrainian forces, months after Kyiv's surprise advance into Russian territory shook the front lines.
Russia's defense ministry released this video on Sunday of what it said were drone strikes on a Ukrainian military column in Russia's Kursk region. Reuters was able to partially confirm the location of the video as Suja, but could not independently verify the date it was recorded. Russia has been pressing to regain control of the Kursk region with some success in recent days. Open-source maps on Friday showed Kyiv's contingent in Kursk nearly surrounded after rapid Russian advances. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said on Sunday the offensive was continuing and that the encirclement was almost complete. The Ukrainian military's general staff in a late afternoon report said its forces repelled 15 Russian attacks in the Kursk region. It also reported 12 Russian airstrikes on their positions. Ukrainian troops stormed into Russia's Kursk region last summer, taking chunks of territory in an unexpected lightning attack more than 2 years after Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered tens of thousands of troops into Ukraine. Kyiv said the attack was an attempt to gain a bargaining chip in future negotiations and to force Russia to shift forces from eastern Ukraine. Russian advances and U.S. President Donald Trump's upending of U.S. policy on Ukraine and Russia have raised fears among European leaders that Ukraine will lose the war and that Trump is turning his back on Europe. The U.S. paused military aid and the sharing of intelligence with Ukraine this month after a meeting between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on February 28th descended into acrimony.
Just 3 months after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime, Syria's new government under Ahmed al-Shara is facing global condemnation following a 4-day wave of violence in Latakia and Tartus, where retaliatory attacks by security forces left nearly 1,500 people dead, most of them civilians.
Crowds gathered on Sunday in Damascus with placards that read "Stop the Killing," after the country saw its worst violence since 13 years of civil war ended in December. After a group of Assad loyalists ambushed a Syrian security forces patrol last Thursday in Jabal Latakia, Damascus sent backup to the region and launched a crackdown on so-called remnants of the Assad regime in the Latakia and Tartus regions. Militias loyal to the government appear to have joined the crackdown, which spiraled into an indiscriminate campaign of violence, killing mostly civilians from the Alawite minority. On Sunday, President al-Shara distanced his government from the violence.
We affirm that we will hold accountable, firmly and without leniency, anyone who's involved in the bloodshed of civilians, who overstep the powers of the state or who exploits their authority. No one will be above the law, and anyone whose hands are stained with the blood of Syrians will face justice sooner rather than later.
Calling the attacks on civilians and mistreatment of prisoners isolated incidents, al-Shara established a committee to investigate them. The Defence Ministry also announced on Monday they would be fully cooperating with the inquiry and that the operation against, quote, remnants of the Assad regime was over, an operation they qualified as successful. A United Nations delegation were in the region on Monday to investigate independently. These massacres come as Islamist rule in Damascus struggles to consolidate power in a country fragmented by ethnic and sectarian divides.
Greenland will vote in a general election tomorrow, which is seen by some locals as a historic chance to free themselves from Danish rule at a time when US President Donald Trump has offered to invest billions of dollars if they join the United States.
Greenland's parliamentary election on March 11th is seen by many residents as the most critical in the island's history. A semi-autonomous territory of Denmark, independence has become a key campaign theme. after U.S. President Donald Trump expressed his interest in acquiring the island. Denmark's ties with the island have been strained after revelations of colonial mistreatment of Greenlanders. While Trump's interest has spurred Denmark to amend the relationship, surveys show the majority of Greenland's population of 57,000 support independence, and some locals see the election as a chance to secede. However, views differ on the timing and the potential impact on living standards. Denmark contributes just under $1 billion annually to the local economy. Trump reiterated his interest in his recent address to Congress and in a social media post on Monday.
And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland.
But a recent poll showed 85% of Greenlanders do not wish to join the United States, with nearly half seeing Trump's interest as a threat. The left-wing Nalarak, led by Pelle Broberg, is the largest opposition party and strongly advocates for a swift transition to full independence. Election polls are scarce, and political analysts said it is not clear whether voters will gain back the ruling left-wing-led coalition.
Now for an update on the hostage situation in Gaza. The US envoy who held unprecedented direct talks with Hamas said the meeting has been very helpful and he was confident a hostage release deal could be reached within weeks.
A U.S. Special Envoy for Hostages who held direct talks with a Palestinian militant group Hamas said Sunday that the meeting was very helpful, signaling that a hostage deal could be reached within weeks. A Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, Adam Bola, expressed confidence that a deal to release Israeli hostages could be reached soon after holding several secret meetings with the militant group. Boller said his meetings with the Hamas leadership in recent days were to pinpoint the group's endgame in bringing hostilities to a close. Now, there are 24 hostages, including 22 Israelis who are presumed alive, still being held captive by Hamas. And meanwhile, Israel continues to pressure Hamas after the end of the first phase of the ceasefire deal, this time by cutting the electricity supply to the enclave.
Let's go for a short commercial break. More world news right after this. Welcome back. 2 moon landings in less than a week have once again turned the spotlight on the space startups as NASA leans to private companies to tend scientific payloads to lunar surface at the lower cost before US sends astronauts there around 2027.
2 moon landings in less than a week have turned the spotlight again on space startups. NASA is leaning on private companies to send scientific payloads to the lunar surface at a lower cost before the US sends astronauts there around 2027. So who are the startups competing to offer their services?
3, 2, 1, ignition. And liftoff.
Intuitive Machines' mission last year became the first US touchdown on the lunar surface in more than half a century.
CS lunar lander separation confirmed.
Led by former NASA employees, its second lunar lander, Athena, on Thursday apparently landed on its side near the south pole of the moon. It rendered the mission off-nominal. The company has one more planned mission to deliver additional research tools to the lunar surface for NASA. However, the company has delayed the mission, scheduled for 2026, to wait for the deployment of its communications satellite. The Texas-based company succeeded in its first attempt to land on the moon with its uncrewed Blue Ghost spacecraft on Sunday, kicking off a 2-week research mission. Firefly, backed by AE Industrial Partners, has a $101 million contract for the Blue Ghost mission from NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Services program. Elon Musk's SpaceX, one of the world's most valuable startups, has led the private sector's efforts in the space industry, but its latest test launch of the Starship mega rocket, meant to take humans to Mars, exploded after minutes in space, marking the second straight failure this year. Its 7,000-strong Starlink satellite constellation provides broadband to parts of Earth.
And we have liftoff.
Behind SpaceX, Rocket Lab, founded by New Zealander Peter Beck, is the most frequent private launcher of rockets. It's widely considered to be one of the more promising new space companies and is currently developing a medium-lift rocket called Neutron to carry heavier payloads to space. Jeff Bezos-owned Blue Origin has been selected by NASA to develop its Blue Moon human landing system for the Artemis 5 mission. At a contract value of $3.4 billion, the company plans to launch its uncrewed Mark 1 cargo lander to the moon this year to test hardware. The company also competes with British business tycoon Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic for space tourism.
At a scenic Sonoma vineyard, the beloved winery dog and local celebrity whose story has captured hearts and now inspired an extraordinary decision by her owner to keep her legacy alive. Take a look.
In the world of wine, there's one ingredient you can't bottle.
Most wineries have dogs.
Arthur Murray is the president of Flambeau, a picture-perfect Sonoma vineyard, as did its most famous ambassador, Stella.
Welcome to Flambeau.
Stella is what's known as a winery dog, and she does more than just charm visitors. She guards the grapes and keeps unwanted invaders at bay. She's so good at her job, she even made the wine dog calendar as Miss July.
Come on.
But after a decade on duty, Stella was slowing down.
Look at the fish.
Murray couldn't bear the thought of her not being here.
She's a part of the family, she's a part of the wine, and I want that to continue.
He thought he'd have to get another dog, but then someone half-jokingly suggested he clone her.
Down.
Enter Mela, Stella's genetic twin and the world's first clone winery dog.
Come on.
It cost about $50,000. The best part, Stella gets to train her mini-me. In the 30 years since a sheep named Dolly made headlines as the first mammal to be cloned, the practice has become a booming business. But not everyone is toasting the idea. Robert Klitzman, a physician and bioethicist at Columbia University, says pet cloning involves potential stress and health risks for both surrogates and clones. He also points to a lack of transparency within the industry.
Perfect. And then
not to mention, it's not a carbon copy. Like twins, they have different personalities. Stella is a serious dog, while Mela is all about play. But for Murray, it's close enough.
Does she feel like an extension of Stella?
Yeah, that much is for sure. To me, it's like immediately I fell in love with her, and it's because I was just like looking at Stella.
Well, not exactly. But Arthur Murray is obviously a glass half full kind of guy.
A small Brooklyn coffee shop is striving after owner Rachel Neve's emotional social media plea went viral. Faced with competition from a larger chain next door, her heartfelt message sparked an outpouring of support, with customers now lining up to keep Buddy's Coffee alive.
It's David and Goliath Coffee Edition.
You finally feel like you're winning and you are living that part of like the American dream, and then someone wants to step on me.
Rachel Nieves owns Buddy's Coffee in Brooklyn. Business was going fine until she got the news that a new, much larger coffee shop was opening right next door. So Rachel got on social media and made a tearful plea.
This is my life. This coffee shop is my life. It just feels like you just can't win. Like the small people can't win.
And coffee lovers started lining up in droves outside Buddy's to keep the place going. Even pop star Joe Jonas paid a visit.
I saw this amazing video. I'll tag the link. Heartbreaking video. And I want to go support. And I think you should too. Buddies. Be a buddy.
Well, that's a wrap from all of us on World News Tonight. I'm Marsha Fernando, and we leave you with the stunning visuals of Britain's royals marking the Commonwealth Day with a special religious service. Thank you for watching and have a good night.